Hey guys, this is Mitch with Fine Point CGI, and today we're going to talk about baking and optimizing our mesh. So we're going to talk about how to create a low poly object. We're going to talk about how to take the detail from your high poly object and transfer it to your low poly object. And then we're going to talk about how to create our first LOD and kind of the process of looking at it and trying to figure out a way to make it as efficient as we can. So that's what I have in store for you guys today. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do to optimize our asset is to reduce our poly count. So to put it in perspective, in a lot of games that you play, a lot of times what you see is not actually what the asset looks like. So a lot of times they use what's called a normal map or texture detail to make something look like it's a higher poly than it actually is. So what we'll do is we'll duplicate this guy and make a low poly version of it. So if we right click our collection and duplicate it, we come in here and we rename this one high poly. And we come up and we make sure that this one is named low poly. Now you don't have to make sure the name is correct, but I like to do this because it gives me something to work with. And I'm going to hide my high poly. Now, if we take a look at this low poly object, you can see that it is currently 800,000 triangles. And that is absolutely unacceptable in terms of gameplay development. 800,000 polygons is ridiculously large. So to put it in perspective, a lot of times the characters that you see are somewhere in the range of 2,000 to about 100,000, depending on how important that asset is. And characters can be around 2,000 to about 100,000 ish. Usually, I've seen them around 10,000 is my normal throw a dart at a wall to see if it'll stick kind of thing. That's usually what I target when I do characters. But when I do assets, that's a whole nother ballgame. The goal of retopoing your asset is to make it as close to zero as possible without affecting the actual look of the object. And what I mean by that is if we take a look at this object, you can see that we have all of these polygons here. If we get rid of our subdivision surface and we get rid of our solidifier booleans like that, the asset itself really hasn't changed all that much, right? But our poly count has. We are now down to 27,000 triangles. And that is what retopping is about. It's about trying to make it as low as possible without affecting the silhouette of the object. So, to put this into a better perspective, if we take a look at this object here, okay, and we look at it, if you look at the silhouette of the object, you can see that this little crease here doesn't actually exist. So those additional polygons are not doing any benefit to us that we couldn't just create a texture to do that. So to make it easier for us, Blender actually has a feature to help us out with this. So if we come up here and we go over to Studio Lighting, and then we come down and click the down arrow, and we come over here to flat, and then we change the color to single and we change it to black. And this is how I like to retopo. So I like to have my asset black. And I know some people might be wondering, well, why would you do that? Well, here's why. If we look at this asset here and we hit tab and we look at some of these stuff in this asset, so I'm going to hit 2 to go into edge selection mode. You'll see that we have a bunch of lines here, right? Obviously from our edges and things like that. So if we come in here and we select this guy and we hit X, delete edge loops, you'll notice that if we hit tab, our silhouette has changed. So if I hit Control Z, and I tab, you'll see that our silhouette has gotten back to where it was. But if I come into here, onto these lines, right here, these two, and I get rid of them, you'll see that our silhouette hasn't changed. And that's the goal of retopoing. It's to change your polygon structure to reduce the overall polygon amount without changing your outline of your object. So for instance, if we come in here, we take a look at it. So come in here, grab this guy, grab this guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy, and hit X, delete those edge loops. You'll see that by reducing our polygon amount by 300 almost. Actually, it looks like 200. So if I get rid of them, you'll see that it's reduced it by about 200, but it hasn't changed at all how it looks. And that's the goal. So we'll come in, we'll clear out these guys, we'll clear out this guy. We will come in here, get rid of that edge loop. We'll come in here, we'll take a look at this. I think that one's okay. And then we will come up here. We can take a look at this guy. It's up to us if we want to get rid of this. It's just slightly enough that I don't think removing it is going to be that big of a deal, but it's up to you guys. Since this is supposed to be a hero asset, it's supposed to be something that the player is going to have in their hands. We probably shouldn't get rid of this until we do our LODs, so we'll continue just getting rid of stuff. So if we come into here and we select all of these guys like so, and we get rid of them, and then we come over here and we do the same thing here and we get rid of those guys, and we come in here and we get rid of this guy, and we get rid of our subdivision surface, you'll see that our overall silhouette is the same. If we actually come down here and we show our associated high poly, and you look at it, you'll see that our silhouette is very, very much the same. We don't have to worry about losing any detail. Now, if we rehide our high poly, come in here, we hit tab. Let's take a look at this guy. We can get rid of this. We can get rid of that. We can get rid of these guys. And we can get rid of our subdivision surface. And Karnak, which is making my life difficult, so I'll take it out for now. If we take a look at this guy's probably too much to even have, so we could probably just get rid of it, to be honest. So let's just remove it for now. And we can take a look at this guy. That's probably okay. We should apply our solidify modifier, so that way we have actual geometry. And we should probably unwrap this better. So we'll just do this and hit Control E, and we'll mark a theme. And then we can come into here. We can take a look at these guys. You can see we have our array of objects. Let's apply that so that it's applied. And let's take a look at our subdivision surface here. So if we look at this object, we go down to 0. You'll see that overall, our polygons don't really change that much. Our actual silhouette doesn't change that much from 2 to 1, and it changes just a little bit from 1 to 0, but I think that that's acceptable. So we'll get rid of our subdivision surface. We'll select this guy and do the same thing. So 2 to 1 is fine, but it looks like 1 to 0 probably is too little. So we'll keep 1 and we will apply it. Also, we'll take a look at the overall silhouette of this. So if we select every other one like so, select these guys like so, get rid of those edge loops. Does it really make a difference? I don't think so. I think that will be fine. So we'll get rid of those. And you'll see that we're now down to 3,000 about triangles. And that's actually getting pretty good. So if we hide this guy, we take a look at this guy here. So I'm going to hide this and hide these guys. And if I hit tab, I take a look at it. That looks pretty optimized to me. So we'll keep that. If I hide this and I take a look at this guy, that looks pretty good as well. So I'm going to unhide all of these guys. And I think we are good to go. Now I'm also going to remove these stars here. So I'm going to select this, hide, and then I'm going to select these guys and get rid of them. We don't necessarily have to get rid of them, but they're just a giant waste of space. So we'll just get rid of them. And then we'll hit Alt H. And there we go. So now we have ourselves a nice lower poly version of this asset. Now we just have to re-unwrap it. And something that I like to do when I'm building my low poly of something is I like to combine everything into one. I'm going to hit A, and I'm going to unselect my glass and not have it as a part of this. And there's a reason for that. So when I hit Control J, and I hit Control J, first you'll see we have some broken stuff right here. It looks like I forgot to apply my mirror modifier. So we'll do that real quick. So apply, and then I'll hit A, Select that guy, select this guy, control join, and now everything is one object. Now, the reason why I don't want my glass to be a part of this object is not because I don't like glass or anything. It's because I don't want my glass to be a part of the baking of this mesh because it's going to cause a lot of problems. So that's something that we need to keep in mind. Next, we need to rewrap this object. Because if we look at our UVs, due to us messing around with this asset, some of our UVs have gotten broken. They're not actually that bad. So looking at them, I think they're pretty reasonable. We might want to clean up a few of them. We do have a bunch of UVs stacked on top of here. So if I grab this guy here and I move it over, you'll see that we have a bunch of stuff up here. We might want to grab this, Control L, move it over here for right now. But really, I think all we need to do is repack this. Part of my UV packing tutorial, I missed that our glass is going to be separate. So since our glass is going to be separate, it'd be good to repack this, that our stuff actually packs well and has lots of details, if that makes sense. So I'm going to grab this guy. I'm going to hit N. I'm going to go into the squares and I'm going to do grid by shape this guy. And I'm just going to select all of this. I'm going to go to UV packer and pack. And it unpacked my guys. You can see right here. So I don't want that. So if I come in here and I hit P to pin them, now if I pack it, that'll stop these guys from moving. And you'll see that if we do that, I bring these guys in like so, that should give us a better resolution of our pack. So it says we're at about a 77%. I think that we're probably a bit higher than that. And I think we can pull these guys back out and let's adjust this a little bit. So let's grab the bottom of our object here. And it looks like I actually missed one of these guys. So I'm going to hit X, delete that edge loop. If we take our bottom and we scale it down quite a lot, and we shut off rescale UV charts and we hit A, pack, and we repack it, see if that gets us a better result. And I honestly don't think it's going to. We just Control Z back out real quick. I don't think it gave us any benefit, so we'll keep that texture detail there and we'll expand this guy up so it covers up some of that space. And let's see if there's anything that the user might see more often than not. So let's see. Something like this, which is packed pretty well. Yeah, I think that will work for the most part. I think we'll be good with that as our pack. It's not the most ideal. Technically speaking, you could get away with doing a automatic UV unwrap, and that probably would give us a better pack job. We check and we duplicate this guy and we hit tab U, smart UV project, and we set this to something like 40-ish, like so. And then we pack it. I mean, I don't think that gives us that much of a better pack job other than it's slightly dirtier. So I think we'll just stick with the hand pack job instead. We'll get rid of all of that. And we'll get rid of these empties as well. And let's rename our cylinder to lantern. And let's rename our glass 002 to just glass. And then we can go ahead and bake our asset. Now, this is where things get cool. Now, inside of 3D art, what you can do is you can actually transfer the details from your high poly to your low poly. And it can do a lot of stuff. It can make up a lot of ground where you lost when you made your low poly, right? It can actually really make your stuff look good when previously it didn't look great. Now, you can use Blender to bake your stuff, and Blender is awesome at baking your stuff, but default Blender for baking your stuff is frankly pretty terrible. Not to say that Blender itself is bad at it, but to say that the way that you have to go about doing it is not fun. So if I come up to render tab here and I change my render engine to cycles, if I come down here, you'll see there's a section called Bake, and this is where you can do all of your baking. And this does work, and it works fairly well. However, it's really kind of a pain to use because you have to basically target an image texture, and you got to do a lot of work to get it to work, and you got to massage it a lot for it to do what you're trying to do. So instead, let's use an add-on that's free that saves us a bunch of trouble. And the add-on is called Bakelab 2. And this add-on will save you a bunch of time. Now, I already have it installed, but I'll show you guys how to install it in a second. But basically, this add-on is going to make it way easier to use it. Now, there are a lot of different add-ons. So if I come back to Blender, I actually have one of them right here called Text Tools. This guy does awesome work for baking as well. If I come into the baking section here, you can see that there is an entire section here for baking. But the reason why I don't like to use this as much for baking is because it's way more complicated than it needs to be for my use case. That's not to say that it's not great or anything like that. It's just not as good as I'd like it to be, or not as easy, I guess, to use. So what we'll do is we'll download the Bakelab 2. So we'll click on code, download a zip, and it'll pull down a zip file. Now I already have this, but I will download it. We'll go back to Blender. We'll go to Edit, Preferences, and we'll come in here and go to Install, and we'll go to where our stuff is located. So Downloads, and then Blender Bakelab 2 Master, hit Install Add-on, and then normally it'll automatically search for it. So it'll have Bakelab up here, and just make sure you hit the little check button. Now, once you have that, if you go into your viewport here and you hit N and you come over to Bakelab right here, you will see that we have this fancy panel here. Now, this panel is really useful. So for instance, if you were creating materials, right? If you were coming into Blender and you were making some fancy materials, you could use this to bake that material into a texture. You can actually tell it to bake that stuff down and turn it into a metallic map, a roughness map, and all that stuff just through this using the individual objects. In our case, we want to bake our detail from our high poly to our low poly. So how we can do that is we can show our high poly, and we can come in and hide our cubes here. So our little star, our other star, our 8, and I believe this is 7. Yes. Yes. We can hide these guys. And I think we have to turn on, if I come to our low poly and shut it off, that's what our high poly looks like. This is what our low poly looks like. So to do our baking, we first have to set up our maps. And to set up maps, it's really simple. So if you come down here to the little plus icon, click on that, and choose your type of map. Now, in our case, we're going to bake the color first. So we need to put in our albedo. And now we get to choose our size. And size is up to you on what you want them to be. In my case, I'm going to make our size 4096 by 4096. And the reason why is because 4096 by 4096 is a 4K texture. And we can have an argument one way or the other on 4K textures. Most of the time, I think 4K textures are fairly useless. I don't think they provide a gigantic benefit that some people believe that they provide. And I'll have to have a whole argument on whether or not 4K versus 2K is worth it versus 1024 for texture size versus memory and performance differences. But in my case, generally speaking, I think that 4K textures are too much. But if you generate out a 4K texture, you can always scale a texture down. You cannot scale a texture up. If you scale a texture up, it looks worse. If you scale a texture down, it either looks the same or looks better. So that's the reason why I'm baking it at 4K, even though it's going to take a lot of time. Now we got to do that for our other channels. If we remember correctly, if we come over to our shading panel here, we come in here and we take a look at our shading. We have base color, metallic, roughness, and normal. So that means that we need to build those specific maps. If we head back to layout, hit N, and then go to Bakelab, and we click plus, we need to have a normal map. So we'll click OK. We need to have a roughness map, right? And we need to have our metallic map. Now, we don't actually have a metallic map, so we need to figure out how we can build that. Well, metallic maps inside of Bakelab do not exist. Instead, you have to do a custom pass, and that's what this little function right here is for. If we click on this and we hit OK, you'll see it says color, base color, albedo paint, and color, which isn't what we want. We want our metallic. Well, we can come over here on the right, click, and then click on metallic. Now, I'm not sure exactly the reason why they separated the two and made that distinction, but for whatever reason, we have to do that for our metallic map. So we'll do that. And then I'm going to add one other map, and that is the ambient occlusion map. So if we click here and go down to ambient occlusion and hit OK. Ambient occlusion will always make your asset look better, depending on how much you put on there. Ambient occlusion darkens your edges and overall grounds your objects and makes them feel like they're kind of together, like they actually fit together correctly. So it provides an ambient darkness to the creases of your object, and it always makes it look better, generally speaking. So once we have these guys, we need to take the detail from our high poly, so all of these guys right here, to our low poly, so this guy here, right? So to do that, we have to select all of these guys, minus our glass, and select our cube, and then select our lantern. And then we can change our bake mode from individual objects, which will bake the textures to our UVs. From that to selected to active. And what this will do is it'll take the data from these selected objects, the slightly darker orange color objects, and project those details onto our brighter color lantern object. And then we'll make sure we have GPU compute because that's going to make things a lot faster, especially if you have a CUDA system. So an NVIDIA graphics card will speed this up a lot. Unfortunately, I have an AMD, so this is going to not help very much. But if you have an NVIDIA card, it will save you a bunch of time. We're going to keep our image size as fixed. Anti-aliasing, we'll set it to 1. And for output, instead of pack, we'll go to save. And it's going to save it out to our C users FinePoint CGI, in my case, directory. And we will create our folder. And then we'll just click bake. And this is going to take a very long time. So I will be right back. It's probably going to take about a half an hour for me. So it's going to be a minute. So go get some coffee. I'll see you guys in a minute. Let's take a look at this. You'll see that we have Bakelab baked total images of 5. That's good. If I kind of zoom this guy in for you, total images of 5. Apply only to selected, make single user, generate materials, apply AO, apply displacement, and finish. Now, the way this works is if we have all these objects selected and we click generate materials, what's going to happen is it's going to generate materials on all of these guys, and we don't want that. Let's click on our lantern specifically and click generate materials, and then hit apply AO and then finish. And now if we switch this over to the viewport shading, and we grab this object and we move it over, you will notice that our object looks very similar to our other object. The only difference is you'll notice the texture quality is not nearly as good if we zoom in nice and close. And you'll notice that the metallicness of it's not quite there. Let's take a look at our shading and let's see what's going on. We take a look. Our metallic has been placed in the proper pass, so that's good. and it is set to non-color color space, so that's also good. So I think it's just a difference in the quality of the image itself. The overall roughness is correct. You can see by looking at it, it's very similar to the other one, but the actual detail on the texture is not nearly as good. And the reason why is because this is a generated texture. So we have multiple 4K images stacked on top of each other to produce this result here. So if we bake it down to a 4K texture, it's not going to look as good. That's just the nature of the beast. That's how it's going to be. There's not much we can do about that. Something else you'll notice is if we look at our normal map here, so you can see here, if we select this guy, we have our normal hooked in, but it's hooked into the wrong spot. And this is an issue with the actual tool itself. If we drag this guy into our normal map, well, everything looks definitely more pronounced, but it also looks a lot worse. You'll look and you'll see that this is kind of weird here, and it's all kind of broken. So why is that? Well, if we take a look at our mesh, you'll notice that our mesh has that issue. You'll see here that we have some broken areas right here. So how do we solve that? Well, the simplest way when you're doing hard surface objects is to add in what's called an edge split modifier. So let's add that in real quick. So we'll drop in an edge split. It's going to take a minute to think, and bam, that'll straighten all those edges out and make it look a lot better. Now, as for the texture resolution issue, we could bake this at 8K and that would solve this problem, but it's also going to make our bake time be massive. And the texture we're going to get out of it is going to be massive. So we might not necessarily want to do that. Now, in a lot of games, a lot of times guns will have multiple texture maps on them to help with the resolution of the individual texture. Now, in my case, I'm not going to do that. But if you guys want to do that, all you have to do is you just click on this object, come in here, get rid of its materials, re-unwrap it to have two separate objects, and then bake those objects independently. And that will solve that issue. And you'll get those nice high detail maps out of it. But do know that when you do that, you are doubling the amount of memory that that object is holding on to. Something that I always tell people is you have to balance the memory usage of an object versus the actual resolution of the object. It's extremely rare that we're going to get closer than this far away from this object. So is it really going to benefit it to have two 8K textures or a single 8K texture or two 4K textures or any of that? I mean, honestly, not really. So we don't really need to do that. So what we'll do is we'll just solve this small issue and then we should be good to bring this into Blender. So let's drag this guy over. So we'll hit N, come up here, put this guy to 0 to snap him back on top, and we will fix this issue. So we'll select our top one, select our bottom one, control click on that guy, control click on our Taurus, and then control click on our lantern. Go back to Bakelab and just say, we're good. Let's go ahead and bake this. And now it's going to rebake this. Now, the cool thing about setting our output as save instead of pack, if we go to our file browser here, and you'll see that I have my recording videos, including the one that I'm recording right now. These are all for this one tutorial, and I basically am going to scrap most of them. But if we come down to see users, find point CGI, and then we come into our lantern, you will see here is textures. Now, if we take a look at these guys, they're actually really cool to look at. So this is your AO map. It provides that darkness in between edges. If you see on the top right here, where the top of our actual lantern is, this section, you can see the darkness right here. That helps ground those objects to be on this object. You can see here's our normal map, and you can see all the issues with our normal map. This will be solved in our next bake, so that's good. We go over here, this is our metallic map, and it looks pretty good. We may want to bring it into a photo editor and just kind of crunch it a little bit to help add that extra punch of metallic. Here is our roughness map. And finally, our albedo map, but this one is our wrong albedo map. I think this is the one that's currently being baked, and then our current albedo map. And you can see if we zoom in just how detailed this little texture actually is. Now, like I said, we could bake this up to an 8K if we wanted to, or we really have a lot of wasted space in here. This is not an end all be all optimization tutorial here. If you take a look, you can actually come in and like expand these guys' size, or expand your wicks size, or expand maybe this piece's here size so that it takes up more space and it makes it a little bit better and more a higher resolution picture for elements. Or if you want to make it even more efficient, you could cut these guys up and then try to play a little bit of Tetris to make it work better. Sometimes it's better, sometimes it's not. It just kind of depends on how it works out. But we're going to let this guy bake and I will be right back. All right. Now we'll just click generate materials. We'll let this generate and let's see how it went. We'll click on this guy. We'll drag it over. I think I grabbed the wrong guy real quick. We'll grab this guy, drag it over. And there we go. I mean, it looks pretty decent. Again, the texture resolution's not quite there, but that's mainly just because we're baking at 4K and not something like 16 or higher. But that's okay because it still will look good from the distance that we need it from, so that will work well. Now, you also notice that if we come in here, come into our material, and attach our normal map to the proper spot, go. And that looks good. Awesome. I think that looks good. I think we're good to go. Cool. So now all we have to do is export out our glass and our lantern as GLTF, and then it will be pretty much game ready. Now, in a lot of games, generally we like to make what's called LODs, and that's level of details. And that's something that I can cover in this tutorial if we have time. We'll see how it goes, but let's get this into a game engine. So we'll hit this to 0. We'll select our glass and our lantern, and we'll go to File, Export, GLTF, and we will export this out to our project location, which in our case is the Godot horror game C#, which is the C# version of our horror game. We go into models and we click on lantern.glb. You'll see my testing here in probably a previous recording. If we come in here and do limit to selected objects and click export to GLTF, if I open up my Godot horror game and I snap it to this location, we come over to our test level here like this. We come up to our scenes, models, and lantern. We right click and new inherited scene. You will see here is our asset pretty much good to go. You'll see we have that nice little texture to help break up our material and our transparency here. And we have our ambient occlusion, and everything seems to be looking pretty decent. Now let's take a look at our material. I have a feeling that we're probably missing some surfaces. Something that I've noticed with the GLB importer is that sometimes it misses stuff. Let's take a look. It looks like it missed our AO map, which is okay. It grabbed our normal map. It packed our metallic and roughness maps, which is something that I will talk to you guys in the future. This is extremely important, and making sure that it's done correctly is actually really important. But I think other than that AO mishap, I think it's pretty much good to go. So if we want our material to be fully correct, we're going to need to add our AO map. And basically the only way we can do that is by right clicking our mesh, making it unique, and then right clicking our material and making that unique as well. And then we can come into our C drive. We can go into users, find point CGI, lantern, and then we can just drop in our AO map. Now you'll see I've already dropped in an AO map from a previous version of this tutorial, but we'll click on our cylinder. We will click on our AO, ambient occlusion. We'll turn that on, and then we'll drag AO.png over to our texture like that. And it's going to re-import it. And there we go. Now you'll notice if we shut it off, versus turn it on, it's very, very subtle, but it does make a pretty big difference. It helps make it feel more grounded and helps make it feel better. Now, we can make this scaled to the proper scale, and that also can help. So if we scale this down to about here-ish, that's give or take the correct scale of a lantern, and you can see how it looks. It actually looks pretty decent for a game asset. Now, all we have to do is just create our LODs. Now, when I say LODs with an S, that means that we have multiple of them. And I'm not going to go through making all of them. I'm going to show you the process of doing one. And then in the next video, we'll talk about how to actually create an LOD system that switches out our LODs. To create an LOD, we'll just come into Blender real quick and we'll go by really quick. The idea of an LOD is I want to make this a lower resolution of our mesh without changing our UV unwrap. And the reason why is because you want your UV unwrap to be the exact same if you can get away with it, because that's going to reduce the amount of memory usage your game has. So if you were to have, for instance, 5 LODs or 3 LODs, and all the LODs all use different maps, then it's going to be 5 multiplied by, let's say, at a minimum 3 textures. So you're looking at 15 textures. Whereas if those 5 LODs can maintain the same packing, then it's going to, instead of being 15 textures, it'll just be the couple textures that we need. That's kind of the whole point of keeping your UVs the same. Now, if we come in here and we hit tab, let's take a look at what we have here. So we can definitely clean this up quite a bit to make our LODs. So first I will hit the 2. I'll select these guys right here because I'm less concerned about our actual shape of an object, and I'm more concerned with getting it down to a low level without affecting my stuff. If I get rid of these guys, you'll see if I zoom out and I hide my high poly, if I zoom out, do you notice that those humps are not there? And no, you don't, because it's so far away. So that's kind of the idea, is you want to look at your mesh about this distance away and say, am I going to notice if that is gone? And if it's not, if you can't notice it, then it's not worth having. So now we can just zoom in and we can start decimating this down. So we can select this guy. I think that's good. You can't really tell that it's that low of resolution, which is kind of crazy if you think about it. When you look at it, you really cannot tell. And we'll take this guy and we'll do the same thing here. So we're going to decimate this guy down quite a bit. So we'll grab these guys like so to decimate it down. We'll straight up get rid of this guy. It doesn't need to be there because you're not going to see it. It's so far away, it doesn't matter. We'll come in here and we will select this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. We want to make sure that we don't get any of our edge loops. So I'm not going to select that one, but I am going to select this one, this one, this one, this one. X, delete edge loops. And you'll notice that this one kind of kept its edge loop. So we'll come in and straighten it out just to help make it so that it feels basically the same. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I don't want to get rid of that edge loop. I don't want to cause an issue with my stuff not quite working out. So I'll just do that and that will work. I'm going to hit tab and come in and let's take a look at this. I'll get rid of this guy here. Technically, you probably should have gotten rid of that in our original one, but that's okay. And we'll just get rid of that edge loop as well and see if that makes a big enough difference for it to matter. I think it's going to, especially when you're far away, so we'll keep it. Let's come over here, take a look at this guy. We'll definitely get rid of this one, and we'll definitely get rid of this one on all of these guys. So let's come in here, and I'll fast forward through me selecting all of these. So I will be right back. And we will hit X, delete edge loops, and that will decimate all these guys down. Now we might need to come in and clean this up just a touch, just to kind of bring these guys back in. And I'm going to take a look at where the seam is for this guy. So I'm going to put it right here. And I'm going to start eliminating these guys. We'll get rid of that. I'm going to select this guy, get rid of that. And we're going to select this guy, get rid of that. We'll come in here and do the same thing. We'll select these guys. And I think that will work. So X, delete edge loops. And there we go. And that way it just looks good. I think that will do. We still have a UV issue here. So let's take a look at why we're getting this UV issue. We'll come in here, go into UV editing. And when this happens, the easiest way to solve it is just to come in here, grab your UVs, and just kind of extend them back to where they should be. We'll just kind of grab this guy. We'll place it, I think, right here. And right there, but we don't really have to worry about how it looks necessarily. It's going to be about this far away, so I'm not super concerned, but I just want to make sure it looks okay. Our wick, at this distance, we could almost get rid of it, but I will instead just eliminate all the geometry that I can. So we'll just come in, do this, X, delete edge loop. So now it's straight. And I will select these guys. And we have a small UV issue here. Let's take a look at it real quick. Just pull that over like that. And then we got to do the same thing with this guy. So we'll decimate this guy down quite a bit. So I'm going to select both of these guys. And I know it's going to change the way it looks at a distance, but it might be worth it. So we'll take this guy down just a bit. That's definitely too much. I think I'll actually leave it. 1200 polygons is not quite as decimated as I'd like it to be. Let me see if there's more that I can decimate. Can I get rid of this? Will that make a difference? I don't think you'll notice it, so we'll get rid of that. Now, the reason why I'm not getting rid of this guy is because I don't want to affect my UVs. If I select this, is it going to affect it any? Oh, it might. So I don't know if I want to mess with that. Let's see if we get rid of it. Yeah, it completely destroys our UVs. So I don't want to get rid of that. I think that's pretty much it. I guess I could get rid of this guy here. And outside of that, I don't think we can do much else other than affect our glass. So we'll take a look at our glass real quick. I'll select both of these guys, get rid of them. And then I'll come in and I'll do every other like I did with the previous object, but I want it to kind of keep with what we have. You'll see that this has a line here. So I want to keep with that. So fortunately, we have a slight issue. So I'll rotate this like that to kind of match it up. And then I'll select all of these guys, every other. And we'll get rid of those edge loops. And we've got one more right here. So we'll just kind of cut that because you're not going to see it from this distance anyway. So it's not a big deal. I think that's about as low as we're going to get this guy without starting to delete stuff from the actual mesh. Now, again, we're about this distance away, so we might be able to get away with getting rid of our wick as well, but I think we'll leave that for another time. We could do some additional optimization if we wanted to triangle fan these guys. And what I mean by that is there is technically a way you could optimize this piece a little bit better. If you go to triangulate faces, you'll see how it triangulates your faces. And technically speaking, you could optimize this triangulation slightly more efficiently by taking all these guys and just kind of taking them to one pole. But I don't think that's going to help very much. You could optimize this. If you click this guy and you come over here and you turn on under options, auto merge, you turn that on and you can come in here and auto merge these guys. So GG, and then you can snap them and you could auto merge them. And that can help with making it a bit more efficient. So you come in here and snap like that. Obviously this isn't going to work because we have our stuff, but you could do it with that piece up there and technically with this guy here, and that would optimize this. Now I do have an additional face in here, it looks like, or an additional something. I'm going to delete that edge loop just to clean that up. There we go. And we're at 1,700, and we haven't lost that much detail. We have lost quite a bit, but we haven't lost a bunch. And I think that will be where we'll leave it. I could optimize these guys a bit more by basically ripping out these segments here. And I'm sure there are some people in the comments telling me to do this, because then if we did this, it would look like that, which would still look okay from this distance. So I guess I'll do that real quick. I'll be right back. And that'll drop us down to 950. And I think that's going to be the lowest I'm going to be able to get this without really taking some drastic measures. And from this distance, you really cannot tell that it's been changed. Now, I did make a mistake and I forgot to keep my previous iteration of this. So let me import that real quick. So go to import GLTF and I will go into my models lantern, and that will just import that mesh real quick. There we go. And if I take a look at it, you can definitely tell that the resolution goes down, right? But if you zoom out really far, you really cannot tell that much. And you drop your polygon budget by a huge amount. You know, if you take a look at this guy and you tab, you have 2,700 faces. But if you take a look at this guy, you have 950. So that's the importance of doing LODs. Now, in the next video, I'm going to do a small bit of code that's going to help us out with creating our LODs. Basically, it's going to keep track of where the camera is in relation to the object, and it's going to switch out to lower LODs. And that will help us with making sure that our game has good LODs. And hopefully we can make it into an editor script and we can actually, you know, keep it and give it away for people to use. But that is all I have for you guys today. So if you like this video, hit that like button. Hey, if you dislike this video, go ahead and hit that dislike button because I am here to make content for you guys. This video was a viewer suggested video, as with most of my videos. So if you have any suggestions, throw them in the comments below and I'll be more than happy to take a look at them. Now, I know that I've been keeping away from the direct Godot tutorials, and I promise they are coming back. I'm working on an inventory system, and it's been kind of difficult because the grid system in Godot is causing some problems. So look forward to that tutorial. Hopefully it'll come out soon. It's just been quite difficult with how it's handling the inventory. And hey, if you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments below or hit me up on Discord. And either I will help you or anybody in that Discord will help you. We've got a great bunch of people there and anybody will help you out. But that is all I have for you guys today. So thank you so much again for watching, and I will see you all next time. Thanks.